As we study the attributes of God, we also do in theology studies of the names of God. Because now maybe you're from a little bit more of a traditional background, like not Anglo, where everybody in my family tree is either John or Alexander. Makes me studying my family line very difficult. They all married Annes or Margarets. So either a really weird family or a bunch of people named the same thing. Now, but maybe you come from a more a different tradition where names are like imparted upon you at birth, something that means like broad-sided warrior or something like that, okay? Or chief man or bearer of many children or mother of all being, whatever it may be. In Hebrew, that's how it worked. Names were not just noises that you make to get somebody's attention. They were sort of spoken over a person and sometimes changed later in life, as Jesus did to his disciples, in order to impart a certain calling or in order to impart a certain value to them that they should grasp onto and hold in their life. And it is quintessentially the case in God's revelation of his names that reveals not just, here's a noise to make towards heaven so I know that you're talking to me, I can turn the Xbox off and listen. Here is a name, though God has no name. God has no eternal name over himself that the other gods were. There was no one else. He just simply was the ground of all being. And yet he reveals himself to humanity and says, call me this, because for your sake, it suggests and communicates some deep realities and truths. El Shaddai, right? Jehovah Jireh, all of these phrases and names that he gave to himself for the people of Israel to call upon him as meaning things like the provider, the powerful one, the Lord, the sovereign one. There are all these names. Yahweh is that name which is kind of taken in the Hebrew. You take the phrase, I am who I am, and make a word out of it, and that kind of became the meaning name. The title name. It was Yahweh, which means I am who I am, but it still sort of had a name in and of itself. Now, we don't know exactly what that name sounded like in the original Hebrew because the Hebrews basically stopped using that name because they were superstitious that it would bring some kind of curse upon them if they said it wrong or mumbled or sneezed or hiccuped in the middle of the name. That would be a blasphemy against God and you should die. God's name is so holy, you shouldn't use it. That's just such a great insult to God. You think he has a name that you can say? Yahweh is for you to say. Now, when I say it in English, I know there's going to be some blokes out the back with a New World Translation who wants to just jump up and go crazy that it's Jehovah, it's Jehovah, it's Jehovah. Have fun. Or tell some Hebrew guy who's going to tell me I'm pronouncing it wrong. I know. Of course I am. God has not concreted himself to a single language as if that's really his name. It's simply that he's saying to us, here's how you can know me by, therefore use it and it will suggest something to you. Now that name, which became really the overarching name that the Israelites were told to use in Scripture, the all-important, the primary name of God was this name, Yahweh. Or in other words, it became the covenant name of God. So that while certain other names described him, Yahweh was more a personal name for Israel to call upon God within the context of the covenant that he had made with them. So I am your God in a very, almost like a marriage covenant sense. Like I'm exclusively yours in this covenant. I'm everybody's God by merit of creation and I will judge all. But in this covenant sense, you can call me Yahweh. And Yahweh means the unchanging one. The one who has in himself the ground of all being. The one who made covenant with your father and your patriarchs. Therefore, the covenant name Yahweh came to really mean the faithfulness of God. Everything we've said so far about God's self-independence, the ground of all being, as well as immutability, his exalted above all changing, all of that is then applied to the context of a covenant. And what a blessed thing that is. If God says these things about himself in terms of a covenant, I mean, if he called himself the quick-tempered one in the context of a covenant, that covenant is going to be a short-lived covenant. But if God calls himself, I am the ground of all being, nothing has existence outside of me. It is impossible, logically and infinitely, in every sense, that I can change or that anything can change me. And I'm the one making covenant with you. That gives significance. That is the theology, the truth that grounds, or that is the foundation of the great blessings that God will then bestow upon Israel and promise to them. And those blessings are not taken as blessings if you don't understand the grounds upon which God is building them. Yahweh then means faithfulness in covenant. God is immutable, or his immutability refers to his own nature. His faithfulness refers to his immutability in his relationships, to his promises. His immutability relates to his being, but his faithfulness is his immutability related to the people that he joins in covenant. So Hebrews 6 verse 18, describing the covenants of God, says, "It is impossible for God to lie." It is impossible for God to lie. Numbers 23, God says, "God is not man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should change his mind. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken, and will he not fulfill it?" That is not just to cross your fingers and hope to give God the right answer. That is God asking you, is there any logical ground or possibility in the endless worlds that God could create where he says he will do something and then fail to do it? If you think there is even a sliver of possibility, you are not thinking of the right or the biblical God. He has no ability to go back on his word or change his promises. Or as he says in Psalm 89 verse 33, "I will not be false to my faithfulness." Faithfulness.